Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, so old newspaper articles in the public domain, and we look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Kansas Farmer from 29th of June, 1918, and this article is entitled, Fort Riley Hospital a Model. Uncle Sam prepares to give our boys the best of care. This one caught my attention immediately because, if you are not aware, the Spanish flu, as it is called, began in this year, 1918, and started around March, I believe, or February, March, in Kansas at Fort Riley. And I looked it up. It turns out to be a very cold winter. And the soldiers, when they had to do any kind of duty outdoors, had gotten into the habit of starting a fire nearby so that they could keep themselves warm. And one thing that they used to build the fires was droppings from the farmers around the town, like in the nearby area. So they would get them donated to them, and they would just use them like the shovelful and set it on fire, and it would burn relatively well, and so they continued to do that. And they're fairly certain that that's what caused the Spanish flu. It was a jump from one species to the next. They're not even sure which species, but they think that it was similar to other things like the swine flu and the bird flu, like it was a jumping species virus. And soldiers got it, and they were treated at this hospital, and then they were sent to the front in Europe because they did not consider it serious. A couple people did die in Kansas, like the first ones did die, but there was only 2 or 3, and so they figured it was a fluke, and so they sent the sick soldiers to the front. That's how it ended up in Europe. Also, because so many countries were involved in World War I, they chose to only allow news of World War I to come through, and they didn't allow news of the Spanish flu to come through. The reason it's called the Spanish flu is because Spain, at the time, was neutral. When the virus hit Spain, which it inevitably did, they started reporting statistics on it. They started reporting the number of people sick, number of people recovered, just like they did with the corona pandemic. When it happened, this pandemic, nobody really reported on except Spain, and that's why it's called the Spanish flu. It did not originate in Spain. It's actually American. So that's one of the reasons why I actually wanted to look at articles from Kansas, specifically from Kansas, knowing that the virus started there. I felt like they must mention it at some point. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to mention it in this article. However, this is an article about the hospital where the first patient 0, was treated for the Spanish flu. So I thought this might be interesting, regardless of whether or not they specifically mention it. So they didn't have a name for it anyway at this point. They called it Spanish flu much later. So this is June, end of June. It's no longer cold and flu season. So outbreak is probably relatively under control at this point, and it became worse later. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the actual condition of the outbreak was at the time. So I have not read this article, but I do think it might be interesting in a historical perspective because of the history attached to it. So I thought you might find that interesting as well. So, Fort Riley Hospital a model. Uncle Sam prepares to give our boys the best of care. Alrighty, let's get started. It is hard enough to send a boy into the army, but if he should get sick, what in the world will happen? Wrote a mother on the western coast to a chaplain at Camp Funston where her boy had been sent. This question has undoubtedly been in the minds of others. The hospital chaplain, Lieutenant G. Charles Gray, in an address at Topeka, explained how the sick soldier is cared for at the Fort Riley Base Hospital, one of the largest military hospitals in the United States and in the world. He assured his hearers that Uncle Sam takes just as good care of his sick soldiers as they could be given at home. Two convincing reasons were given for this by Lieutenant Gray. First, that it is impossible to have a successful army without the highest degree of physical efficiency, as the test of an army in the last analysis is the marching and enduring ability of its troops. Second, the same brave attributes of human personality which are active in this war are operating in our army and taking care of the men. After all, said Lieutenant Gray, we are the government. This body of men is not so much an army as it is a great resistless movement of citizenship towards a goal, an enlarged church parish, if you will. Really? And these forces are all operative to take care of the man in the army if he gets sick. Yeah, I don't feel like there was a feeling of a church parish within the army camps. I'm sorry, but that's really funny. Like, oh no, we take care of him just as well as if he were a parish. Like deacon. Okay, sure you will. Jeez. Oh my gosh, that's just blatantly false. All right. Of course, last fall, when hundreds of men were being rushed into the hospital all at once, it was impossible to have the highest type of efficiency. But the hospital at Fort Riley is now extremely well organized, and the staff is above criticism as far as it is humanly possible to be. Well, that's good. I mean, I don't know how true this is or how, much this is propaganda, but, it sounds sounds good. The first thing that happens to an enlisted boy when he gets sick is that he reports to his company commander at sick call at 11 o'clock in the morning that he is not fit for duty. If necessary, he is sent to the infirmary where he is examined by a physician. If his ailment is found to be a minor one, he is kept there until he recovers. If sick enough, he is taken to the base hospital 3 miles from Camp Funston. When a man comes to the hospital, he is taken first to the receiving station. His case is diagnosed, or if the diagnosis is not certain, he is kept for a while before being certified to any particular division of the hospital to avoid the danger of cross-infection. Yeah. If that had been terribly efficient at the time, remember this is just mere months after patient 0 came into the doors. If that were really true, then it wouldn't have spread like it did. So, color me skeptical, yeah? I don't think he was quarantined. I don't think the first infected soldier was quarantined. A great many of the cases are not necessitous cases, for instance, tonsil or eye conditions, which in civilian life would pass without any attention whatever, but because a high type of physical condition is necessary in the army, the patient must be reconstructed. I don't think that's true. I mean, if you have pink eye or tonsillitis, wouldn't you go to the doctor? Maybe they didn't back then, but, I would. I don't know. Hundreds of men are sent to the hospital who in civilian life would receive no attention. Is that true, though? I mean, I don't feel like that's really true. Many of these are merely deferred cases, minor operations in the surgical section principally, looking to the highest type of manhood before these men are transported out of the country. Highest type of manhood. Okay. A complete hospital record is made on which everything that can be done for the boy is indicated. This record is sent to France when he goes and may mean quite a saving of time for him there. Yeah, duh. You have to put things on your permanent record or else they don't know that you have diabetes. You know, they don't know that you were born with a heart condition. They don't know that you have a skin condition that requires certain medication every day. There are all sorts of conditions that require regular medication that aren't really life-threatening and wouldn't really stop you from serving in the military. You might have acid reflux, that might be very helpful to know. So if you're coming in with a complaint, they might know whether or not to take that seriously, yeah? I think everybody knows this. This is kind of a duh thing, yeah. The detention camp of 1 1/4 or 1.5 miles from Camp Funston is an interesting place. Some 300 or 400 men are detained there, not because they're sick, but because they have been found to be peddling around some disease. To be peddling around? Oh, they're spreading disease. They are to be kept there until cultures are found to be negative, and then they're sent back to camp. Huh. Considering the Spanish flu connection, I'm wondering if that's what they're talking about. It's found to be peddling around some disease. I think they mean spreading disease. So if you were symptomless but you are still spreader of disease, that's definitely possible. Look at Typhoid Mary. 2 or 3 convalescent or reconstruction hospitals are already occupied. Patients who have lost an eye or a limb are cared for here. This will be a most important part of the service shortly. Yeah, so if they are sent back from the war with a life-changing injury, like losing a limb or an eye, I specifically mentioned eyes, although you could have all sorts of facial injuries, then they're sent home and they're sent here to Fort Riley Hospital. So the soldiers in the hospital are a very appreciative crowd of men. They are in a base hospital in a certain spirit of depression on the part of the patients. Most of them have been sent to the hospital soon after coming to its camp because changed conditions often induce sickness. Wow, and they are homesick. Okay, I don't think they're homesick. I think they have the Spanish flu. In addition to this, they feel that they are in a horrible place, a military hospital, and they are suffering. Some, because of contributory reasons, have dropped down mentally. Among them, some officers. Most of them have been gotten back to the road again. Some have to be sent away to other institutions to be given specialized treatment. We need all the help we can get in the hospital, but we need regular help, people who are interested enough to come and get acquainted with the men. Hospital service on the part of civilians is an abomination unless you are willing to go often enough to become familiar with the work. What? Hospital service on the part of civilians is an abomination? Unless you are willing to go often enough to become familiar with the work. I'm still not sure what they mean by that. Hospital service on the part of civilians is an abomination. So they don't want any volunteers? Also, what kind of civilians work at a military hospital? I'm going to Google that, because that's I don't know. I do not know the answer to that. So, civilians at a military hospital. Military hospital is a hospital owned and operated by the armed forces. They are often reserved for the use of military personnel and their dependents, but in some countries are made available to civilians as well. They may or may not be located on a military base. Many are not. In the United Kingdom and Germany, British military hospitals have been closed. Military personnel are usually treated in a special wing of the designated civilian hospital. In the UK, these are referred to as a Ministry of Defence hospital unit. Service personnel injured in combat operations are normally treated at the Royal Centre for Defence Medicine. And there's a list of military hospitals around the world, but there's not that many. It's very, very short. Walter Reed, for example, Tripler Army Medical Center, Brooke Army Medical Center. They don't even mention Fort Riley Hospital. Let me take it up. Fort Riley Hospital. Oh, it's now called the Irwin Army Community Hospital. TRICARE. The short version, Wikipedia. Okay. Fort Riley, Kansas, named after Brigadier General Bernard John Dowling Irwin. That does not tell me anything. Alright, so we're moving on. I don't understand that sentence. I really don't. I think that if there are people like volunteers or like nurses or like receptionists, even like people who are helping in the hospital, then they're helping in the hospital. I don't understand why they would say that it's an abomination unless you're willing to go often enough to become familiar with the work, quote unquote. I'm assuming that whoever is going there is already qualified. I sincerely hope they are. Then I wouldn't have to think about it, but anyway. We are holding in the hospital each Sunday from 12 to 15 religious services. We expect to have more later. These are held in the mess halls. A small organ is brought in, songbooks, girls from the surrounding towns to sing, and a carefully selected corps of men to do the speaking. Some of these services are attended by every convalescent man in the section, not because we command them to come, but because they like to come. They like the music and the serious consideration. I have never seen a class of men so responsive religiously as the men in the hospital wards. I do not mean that they are placing crepe on their ideals of life. Thank God they are not. But they are thinking deeply and seriously about deep things of life. Their religion is not always in the form of the church. It is not going to be always in the form of the church after the war. It may be the church will be better off for that. I pray God that the church may be able to take care of them when they come back. They will not come back the same. It is impossible. They will come back with changed minds and changed hearts. Yeah, I mean, everybody does, don't they? I'm going to skip over that part because I feel like that's great that they have religious services. I really love that they did 15 different kinds. I think that's awesome. However, I don't feel like it has anything to do with the hospital. I mean, I'm just saying. It's kind of secondary. Here we go. We now have a circulating library of 6,000 or 7,000 volumes of modern books, and we are shortly to have an experienced librarian from St. Louis. We have established a chaplain's information bureau. The day after his arrival, a man is called on by one of my 20 or 25 workers who tactfully endeavors to find out in what way he can be of service to him, whether he has insurance or not. No way. We're talking about military personnel. You're asking them whether or not he has insurance? Did the military not provide insurance back then? I'm speechless. Whether he has insurance or not. Oh my gosh. Okay, whether he has made his allotment for his parents, etc. Allotment for his parents? Like they're gonna inherit from him or something? That's like creepy. Okay. Pull yourself together. Okay. We propose to carry on arbitrary correspondence with parents of boys with contagious cases. That's good. Arbitrary correspondence. So, like, everybody gets a letter, I guess. We find that sometimes the boy does not want to worry his folks, and he may get pretty sick before he sends them any word. Telegrams have been sent so infrequently that people are alarmed when they receive them. Yeah, that's kind of true. So it's a courtesy call for them, that they're writing a courtesy letter to the parents just to inform them that their child is sick and in the hospital. Not necessarily that they're dying, but just to let them know what they have and why they're there. That's interesting, especially with the case of the Spanish flu and knowing that it killed so many people and many of them are young. So, if they had to send a telegram just the day before he died, then that sucks, yeah? Yeah, it would alarm anyone that receives them. I would freak out if I got a telegram. We are allowed only 2 official telegrams by the government, one when a boy is so sick that his people ought to come, and the other a death notice. Yeah, that's why people are scared to get them, yeah? But from now on, we intend to keep in touch with the parents of sick boys. If your boy has pneumonia, we will probably write you a letter, something like this. Your boy is in the hospital with pneumonia. Mrs. Brown has called on him and finds him under the care of Dr. A, one of our best doctors. His nurse is Miss B, one of our best nurses we have. We assure you he is getting the best of care. We will write you again in a few days if there are any further developments. We feel that we are helping the morale of the Army when we do these things for the boys. This is your hospital, your camp, your boys, and your Army. I invite you most cordially to see me personally and to see the institution also. Yeah, that's a bit of propaganda saying we are so amazing, look at all the amazing things we're doing. Now, I'm not saying they're not amazing. I'm just saying that this was very one-sided, wasn't it? I do think that they are doing some good work, obviously. The chaplain's office is very well organized. I feel like this was written by the chaplain. Yeah, because they're very... they're not talking about medical things as much as they're talking about, soul kinds of things that a chaplain would do. Yeah? Did it say? Yeah, this bodiment is not so much an army as is a great restless movement of citizenship toward a goal, and a large church parish, if you will. Yeah, this is definitely written by a chaplain. This is very churchy. or somebody who works with the chaplain. This is very in that direction. This is so interesting. There was such an emphasis on that back then. I feel like we've lost that a lot. When a chaplain's job isn't necessarily strictly religious, it's also to keep up people's morale and to help them to feel good about themselves so that they don't get depressed and anxious and start having panic attacks and things like that. I mean, I feel like a chaplain's work is more complex than other work that people do, and that it's not necessarily viewed as necessary. And I feel like it's very taken for granted in a lot of situations. So I appreciate that this chaplain is working so hard. However, I do feel like he's making himself look a little good. I'm assuming gender here. Actually, does it even say who wrote it? I was about to look up the author, but I don't see an author anywhere. Unlisted, anonymous, I guess. Editor, maybe. But since most of this is quoted, I mean, it's clearly from a letter from the Army hospital itself. Knowing that this hospital was ground zero for the Spanish flu, it's interesting to read about it, but it's clear to me also that they are still kind of in denial about the Spanish flu being something scary and a little crazy and about to kill millions of people. Estimates for casualties of the Spanish flu are between 50 and 100 million because it was a pandemic that was not under control. Now, as of the day I'm recording this, which is in April 2022, to be very specific, I am going to look up how many people have died from the coronavirus so far in the world. Like, just out of sheer curiosity. No, not specifically in one country. I want it to be worldwide. 6.1 million. Okay? So that's worldwide deaths, which is high, but it is not nearly as high as the Spanish flu was, which had a run of about as long as we've been in a pandemic. It was only out for about 2 years. Just over, I think, 2.5. And then it mutated so that it was no longer as deadly. I am very grateful that it kind of mutated itself to destruction and that we don't have to deal with this on a regular basis. Because in the time that we have lost 6.1 million people around the world from the coronavirus, in 1920, they lost 50 to 100 million people from the Spanish flu. Now, they don't know the exact number because not all countries, not all regions kept records very clearly. They might have said died of flu, or they might have said died of infection, might have said died of pneumonia. It wasn't clear which of those was a Spanish flu and which one wasn't. So they had to just guess. And so their guess is anywhere from 50 to 100 million. Those are estimates, upper and lower estimates. And absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. That at the best case scenario, it's still 10 times more than we have lost from coronavirus. So I am grateful for my own pandemic. I much prefer it to the pandemics of the past. Total cases for 194 million. Documented cases, I should say. I'm sure there have been more cases than that. I feel like any other thoughts are unrelated to the article, so I'm going to end there. So thank you for joining our Microfiche time capsule for today. I hope to continue to try and look for more information about the pandemic of the time, and hopefully find something to share with you. It is very difficult to find since almost all the articles about the war. But we will do our best, and I hope you learned something today. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you again in the next video.